Welcome to Resilient Aquatic Food Systems for a Productive Ocean. So WorldFish is hosting this event as a part of our week-long celebration leading up to the 2022 World Oceans Day to highlight actionable solutions to achieve healthier, more just, and more environmentally sustainable food systems from the ocean. So this event is held in celebration of the International Kickoff Conference of the United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development in Berlin. And that's from 31st of May to the 2nd of June, 2022, under the auspices of the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research. So at WorldFish, our global lead for nutrition and public health, and the 2021 World Food Prize laureate, Shakuntala Tilsted, is one of the members of the international expert group of one of the 7 laboratories of Productive Ocean. And these laboratories are a platform for catalyzing partnerships and co-designing decade actions in order to create the oceans we want. And in today's event, we'll hear from research leaders, high-level board officials, and government partners on aquatic food systems from the ocean by the framework of WorldFish's 2030 research and innovation strategy, aquatic foods for healthy people and planet. And at WorldFish, we're committed to scaling diverse and local solutions to bolster the resilience of aquatic food systems and the people dependent on them, and to enabling the policies to facilitate this together with our partners and stakeholders. And today, we're hoping to highlight some of these success stories in our dialogues and discussions. We'll focus on the rationale, objectives, and insights from the strategy, and highlight some of the success stories from the Solomon Islands and the state of Odisha in India, all to contribute to a productive ocean system for food, nutrition, and livelihood security in Asia, Africa, and the Pacific nations. And the invited speakers are also going to explore some of the key areas of research and investment in Nigeria that can enable transformations for healthier, just, and environmentally sustainable food systems, and a prosperous future for aquatic food sector actors in the emergent blue economy. So, my name is Rainier Hillary-Lombers. I'm the global lead for strategic planning at WorldFish, and I'll be moderating this event. And we already have some 38 participants. It's going up as we speak, and they're joining us virtually from around the world. So welcome, everyone. And while we wait for more people to join, just allow me to quickly direct your attention to a few housekeeping rules. They're showing up on your screens right now. Please take a few moments to read through. So, one, we're going to switch off your cameras and microphones by default. The event's being recorded, and screenshots are going to be used for promotion purposes, so be aware of that. Please do submit your questions via the Q&A box and comments via the chat box. We'll be monitoring those, especially for the question and answer session with our speakers and contributors. We'll also share links to related content in the chat box during the discussion, so do check them out. And after the event finishes, we'll share the event recording and other post-event materials via WorldFish's newsletter. So do sign up now and don't miss that update. I believe there may be some links in the chat for how to do that. If not, we'll get those to you later. So without much further ado, I'm hoping to invite Essam Yassin Mohammed, and he's the Interim Director General at WorldFish. He's also the Acting Senior Director for Aquatic Food Systems at CGIAR. And Essam, I'm inviting you to the virtual floor for your opening remarks. So Essam, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rainier. Thank you very much indeed for this opportunity as well. We live in a very exciting period, I must say, when it comes to aquatic food systems more broadly, or the health of the ocean, particularly because, compare this decade to that of the 1980s and 90s, for instance, where there was very little attention to this very important issue. In this decade, particularly this year as well, after the pandemic, I think there is so much attention paid to this very important issue, and it's come to the forefront of political debate as well. For instance, from this month, over the next few months, there will be the WTO interministerial meeting to be held, to bring an end to the fishery subsidies and thereby meet our target for 14.6 of the SDGs. There is the UN Ocean Conference coming up later this month. And then in August, there's going to be a fifth round of negotiations to fill the governance gap of the high seas. But also the potential emergence or the sort of the momentum that we see now in establishing a similar sort of legally binding instrument to tackle the problem of plastic pollution in the ocean as well. I think this is a very exciting period where we live in. I heard somebody compare this decade to that of 1990s for the forests, where everything was about the forest 1990s, and now it seems to be sort of there's enough momentum here, with respect to aquatic food systems and the ocean health. So, as you know, aquatic foods have an integral and critically important role in transforming food systems and addressing the nutrition and vulnerability crises caused by climate change, overfishing, and a number of other challenges. Aquatic foods can provide one of the most sustainable, nutritious, and resilient food sources that can be accessible to those living in poverty and the most vulnerable populations across the geographies and cultures as well. Now, of course, there's heterogeneity in terms of, we talk about people, but of course, when you look at women, for instance, women account for about half of the overall workforce in aquatic food systems, yet their contributions are often informal and not accounted for in national data or statistics. And as a consequence of that, we always see this negative bias towards them, both institutionally and also from a policy-making point of view as well. Therefore, gender-based barriers reduce women's economic opportunities in aquatic food systems. This compounds women's higher rates of poverty and constrains pathways for moving out of poverty. In WorldFish, and of course our partners as well, we strongly believe that closing the gender gap in aquatic food systems and expanding opportunities for safe and dignified entrepreneurship and livelihoods can improve aquatic food production, boost nutrition outcomes, and drive more equitable economic growth of rural areas in many places that we work in as well. Unfortunately, inefficiencies in aquatic food supply chains constrain access of poor consumers to highly nutritious and affordable aquatic food products as well. Post-harvest losses, which is the biggest whale in the room, are a particularly widespread challenge, with ranging between 27 to 39% of aquatic foods going to waste globally, mostly due to poor handling and processing, transport and marketing techniques, and so on and so forth. Addressing these challenges through a food system approach can yield significant food security gains. There's also an upside here. Aquatic foods emit much lower greenhouse gas relative to land-based food systems. Sustainable management of aquatic animals and plants, for instance, means stored carbon dioxide that would have otherwise been released to the atmosphere. I was really, surprised when I saw a recent study by scientists from the University of Southampton and others who found that sustainably managed fish help remove 1.65 billion tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So simply leaving more fish in the water through sustainable management means we're able to sink more CO2 from the atmosphere. Therefore, aquatic foods could be used in the coming decade or decades to address malnutrition, lower the environmental footprint of our food system, and provide livelihoods to millions of people living in poverty. Therefore, a sustainable and equitable transition to aquatic food-based diets can deliver a triple win for nature, climate, and people as well. Our aquatic foods research agenda addresses the core components of food systems: productive and prosperous supply chains, equitable and inclusive access, and enhanced nutrition and health outcomes, with resilience to shocks and crises, but also sustainability embedded across. Multiple scientific studies conclude that sustainably managed aquatic systems buffer communities against some of the impacts of climate change by enhancing their capacity to respond to a number of shocks, climatic and non-climatic shocks. Examples include resilience of fish communities after the cyclone Pam hit Vanuatu in 2015, for instance, where communities that practice sustainable fisheries management were found to be much more resilient than those who are not. Or the restoration of Hilsa fishery in Bangladesh as well, that has created employment and income opportunities to millions of people in Bangladesh as well. And in addition to that, studies from WorldFish and other similar or like-minded organizations reveal that the benefits of investment in sustainable management of aquatic systems significantly outweigh the cost. Despite the global importance of aquatic systems, there has been insufficient attention by policymakers in investment and policy decisions. WorldFish has provided innovation that responds to a number of challenges, climatic and non-climatic challenges, and generated evidence to inform policy and investment decisions that help build resilience of aquatic systems. Our work naturally focus on low and middle income countries in Africa, Asia, and the Pacific, where there is the highest concentration of vulnerable fisheries and aquaculture dependent communities, and where the consequence of continued inaction will be catastrophic. However, despite, again, the multiple challenges, what is clear is that aquatic systems offer us a sea of opportunities to address some of the most pressing problems of our century. We can only be able to tap on these opportunities, at least through things. One is through increasing our significant investment. Investment in research and development of aquatic science is needed to further enhance environmental benefits and deliver maximum benefit to people, both in terms of meeting nutritional needs and creating viable livelihood opportunities under a changing climate. And the second one is on partnership. We can only do this, meaning the realization of this bigger aspiration to realize a shared prosperity for all through aquatic systems, we can only do that through partnerships with others. And this is exactly what the Ocean Decade offers us. The Ocean Decade is a convening framework for diverse stakeholders to co-design and co-deliver solution-oriented research needed for a well-functioning ocean in support of the 2030 agenda. Capacity development, ocean literacy, and the removal of barriers to social and economic exclusion, etc., are all key. Therefore, in this event, we would like you all to focus on solutions that help us realize a world where aquatic ecosystems and the people who depend on them attain their maximum well-being potential. The realization of a shared blue prosperity aspiration through resilient aquatic systems requires that both hard and soft infrastructures in which they are embedded, eliminate systemic barriers that undermine individual and collective well-being and capacities for flourishing, creating employment and income opportunities for the many, not just a few. Two is respecting ecological boundaries, leading to a regenerative aquatic food production system. And third, ensuring that vulnerable individuals or coastal communities benefit disproportionately more than those who are not. Therefore, as Rainier mentioned earlier, I would like to remind you again, WorldFish, we have developed a 2030 research and innovation strategy, and we would like you to have a look at the strategy. and to consider our strategy as a framework to enable such partnerships to happen and bring about the transformational change we want to see. In other words, a shared prosperity for all through a sustainable, resilient, and inclusive aquatic food system. I really hope this event will offer that opportunity, both to further strengthening existing partnerships, but also potentially creating new ones as well. So with that, wishing you all a very fruitful event, and thank you very much. Back to you, Rainier.
Thank you so much, Essam, for those opening remarks. I think they've set the scene for a very, very fruitful discussion. And I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce Cristina Rumbaitis del Rio. And she's the Senior Adaptation and Resilience Advisor at the World Resources Institute. And she's also on the Board of Trustees of WorldFish. And I'm hoping we can have a few reflections on the strategy and some other aspects of resilient aquatic food systems from you, Cristina. Very much looking forward to it. Cristina, over to you.
Thanks, Rainier. I'm really delighted to be part of this conversation and part of this dialogue today. And in thinking about what I wanted to say at this event, I was really thinking about a couple of inflection points that have happened over the past year or so, some of which we're well familiar with, some of which maybe less familiar with, but I think mark a departure from business as usual in the decades past. And I think, one very important one was that after decades of progress in reducing the number of hungry people in the world, the number of undernourished people grew by estimates are as many as 161 million in 2021, largely driven by the COVID-19 pandemic, by conflict, but also climate change. And I think this was a moment of reckoning that no matter how good our production systems are globally, when they are challenged by a pandemic, by labor shortage, by transport challenges, by trade policies and trade blockages, that people will go hungry. And so it is the resilience of the system as a whole that we need to think about, not just the production side of the equation, which has been for many years really the focus of so much of our efforts in reducing hunger. Another key event, a happy one, and I think many people in this community will be familiar with, is our own Dr. Shakuntala Tilsted was recognized with the World Food Prize in 2021. And I want to highlight this because I think it's a departure from years past in many ways, not to take away from previous winners, but it was focusing the prize on her decades of research and contribution to the field of nutrition. And again, highlighting the role of nutrition in decreasing hunger, that it's not just about producing more food, it's about producing the right food and ensuring the nutritional quality of food. And within that, the important role of fish and aquatic foods in particular in addressing nutrition challenges globally, which we're still grappling with and coming to appreciate. And then in September last year, there was the Food Systems Summit, which really put the food system together into one picture instead of the silos that we've been working on for many, many years. So you had the production side on the one hand, but you had also the role of consumption and nutrition, but also how do we shift to a more sustainable diet? How do we shift to healthier diets and address obesity and overnutrition challenges as well as undernutrition challenges? We also looked at the role of ecosystems and how we preserve ecosystem functions upon which we all depend, especially in the ocean, to continue the production of food over the long term. And we looked at climate change and resilience and how do we reduce the greenhouse gas emissions and the greenhouse gas footprints of our food systems, which account for anywhere near 30% of global emissions, but also how do we address the resilience challenges. And I think for the first time, we really had that common vision of food systems and the different entry points that are needed to work on them. And I would argue that for whatever the Food Systems Summit did or didn't achieve, depending on your points of view, what it achieved is a common vision that we can never go back to looking at things in silos and looking at singular objectives. And some trends like climate change continued, and I'd be remiss in my job if I didn't highlight that we just had the IPCC Working Group 2 report a couple months ago that tells us that unless future policies on climate and adaptation are taken and really taken urgently, the number of people that will go hungry will continue to rise, and estimates are that by 2050 could range from an additional 8 million to 80 million people, with those populations really concentrated in sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, and Central America. So that is something we cannot ignore and cannot put aside. And it's within that context that WorldFish launched its new strategy, which I'm really excited about, because the Aquatic Food Systems Strategy, from its very title, takes a systems level approach, as Essam highlighted in his remarks. It really recognizes that we can't continue to focus on singular goals, but need to look at goals in common and problem solve for the multiple goals that we have for addressing hunger and malnutrition, for addressing ecosystem security, for addressing climate change, for addressing livelihoods and the importance of dignified, equitable, and just livelihoods. And we can't maximize one at the cost of the other. So we can't pursue more resilient production systems at the cost of equity. And I think it's important that the strategy recognizes that. And it highlights a number of fantastic opportunities to provide low carbon, climate resilient, safe and nutritious food from the world's oceans, while employing millions of people with safety, dignity, secure rights, and protecting biodiversity. And just to highlight a few of the opportunities that jumped out at me, I'm sure we'll hear more specific sound bites and examples from the later panelists, but opportunities like using seaweed to reduce the environmental footprint of fish feed. And of course, fish are one of the lowest carbon sources of protein, of animal protein. Another example is the use of digital technology to help small-scale fishers get access to forecasts so that they are safer while they are at sea, but also access to markets so they can get better prices, traceability of the product so we can ensure sustainability, and more direct access to customers, sort of shortening the value chain, improving local food loops, as well as improving tenure rights for small-scale fishers. As Essam highlighted, there's opportunities across the value chain to reduce food loss and waste in aquatic foods. And the strategy identifies multiple leverage points to increase and even retain nutrients along aquatic food value chains. There's even opportunities to use discarded fish matter to make new products, even biodegradable plastics I've seen made out of fish waste that can protect other foods from degradation and reduce food loss and waste in vegetable and other value chains. There's also policy innovations. I don't want to make it sound like innovations all have to be technology oriented. There's policy and practice innovations, governance innovations, as we're beginning to see around governance of areas beyond national jurisdiction, or scaling up co-management regimes with small-scale fishers to give them the incentives they need to produce more sustainably and fish more sustainably. And as Essam highlighted earlier, WorldFish really recognizes that none of this can happen without partnerships. And I think that the strategy puts a very important a high importance on partnerships, research partnerships, innovation partnerships, financing partnerships, action partnerships of every kind. Because WorldFish, as wonderful as it is, does not have the capacity to do everything. Nobody does. And I think importantly, WorldFish is really rethinking the nature of partnerships and how those are built and nurtured, and how to make the impact more effective, more efficient, more equitable, more anti-colonial, and really ultimately more impactful, to get us to the world we want to live in. So I'm really enthused, as you can tell, about the strategy and what's to come, and really excited for the conversation today to start to build those new partnerships that are needed, and really look forward to hearing more about those. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Rainier.
Thank you so much, Cristina. That was a great beginning, and I think a great introduction also to our next section, which is when we'll go into our panel discussion. And we're going to hear from WorldFish research specialists in Odisha, India, the Solomon Islands in the Pacific, and also from our government partner in Nigeria and Africa. And we're going to be focusing on actions for health and well-being of human ocean relations and community-based solutions to protect our oceans and unlock its role in sustainable development. So I'd like to introduce our first speaker in our panel, and I'd just like to mention also that we'll have some opportunity for question and answer afterwards, also with Cristina and Essam, if you as well. So please do keep those questions coming. We'll be taking those away in the Q&A section in a bit. But now, more importantly, I'd like to introduce Delvene Boso, and she's a senior research analyst at WorldFish in the Pacific. Delvene, over to you.
Good evening to you all from my side of the globe. It's an honor to join you all at this event. The ocean is the heartbeat of the Pacific. It feeds and holds us united. And I will briefly talk on why coastal fisheries is the backbone of island economies and livelihoods in the Solomon Islands. A bit of background first to Solomon Islands. Solomon Islands is a small island developing state in the South Pacific. It is home to a population of approximately 708,000 people spread across 9 provinces and about 1,000 islands. 94% of the population live within 5 kilometers of the coastal margins, and over 80% of the population live in rural areas. The country is 90% ocean and only 2% land. With this geographical spread, equitable government and partner service delivery is a challenge. In 2021, Solomon Islands was listed as the second most country at risk of disaster in the world. And according to a 2021 poverty trend report, 24% live in extreme poverty, earning less than a US $1.90 a day. Poverty in the context of Solomon Islands, however, does not entail hunger and destitution, but a daily struggle to meet living expenses for nutritious foods, non-food items, and school fees. Local economies are, however, resilient, at least for now, and continue to sustain livelihoods and provide income for many people. Non-logging agriculture and the fisheries sector constitutes 20.7% of the country's GDP. Tuna is the key fishery source of revenue for the country, earning 2021 about 300 million Solomon dollars, or about USD $37 million. And this came from foreign fleets and was considerably less than the previous years due to the pandemic. The local fishing fleet and cannery industry provides thousands of jobs for locals. In terms of patterns of fishing and selling is gendered, with men generally being catchers of fish using gear, and women being sellers of fish. And women are also mostly gleaners. Fish and aquatic foods, including canned tuna, are the most common animal source of food. Solomon Islands has a per capita consumption of fish of 33 kilograms per year. Fisheries is the secondary go-to marketplace for disaster in most communities. During the mock COVID-19 lockdowns in 2020 in country, 46% of respondents surveyed in a phone survey reported an increase in fishing explained by a growing need for food and cash. Fish aggregating devices are being deployed at the subnational or provincial level as a COVID-19 response activity. In the aftermath of the April 2007 earthquake and tsunami, fish aggregating devices were deployed as a post-disaster fisheries recovery activity. Investments in country in fisheries have mostly been focused on big infrastructure. Recent work with a women's savings group on the west coast of Malaita province have shown that it is possible for small investments, in this case a solar freezer initiative with a women's savings group, to be an alternative model. In 2019, after a couple of years of the solar freezer being with a women's savings group, the committees had earned USD $2,900, recorded 457 unique customers having using the freezers, and almost a ton of fish had been stored. New fish innovations in smoked fish and aquatic food products are also emerging as focus turns towards supporting local initiatives. Enhancing the livelihoods of people who catch, process, or trade with aquatic foods can be a pathway to poverty reduction and food security in island populations. And listening to the ideas of people involved in all aspects of the value chain, from the fishers to the traders to the consumers, can provide a foundation for even more fish innovations to emerge, which is critical for sustaining island economies and livelihoods. That's my talk for today. Thank you, Reina.
Thank you so much, Delvene, for that insight into the Solomon Islands and the resilience of aquatic food systems there. And I think from the Solomons, we're going to be going to Odisha, India, and I'd like to introduce our second speaker, Nita Shenoy, and she's an aquaculture specialist at WorldFish. Nita, we're looking forward to your contribution. Welcome.
Thank you, everyone. A very good afternoon. Today, I will be sharing the experience, my experience with women groups involved in production of hygienic dried fish production in the coastal villages of Odisha. So, Odisha is one of the important maritime states in India, having significant scope for fisheries development. The state has around 6.85 lakh hectare of freshwater resources, 4.18 lakh hectare of brackish water resources, and around 480 kilometers of long coastline for fisheries development. So this marine fisheries significantly contributes to the state fisheries production and national economy. So if we see in Odisha, there are around 813 marine fishing villages wherein fishers reside, and around 1.1 lakh fisher families who depend on fisheries for their livelihood. So among these 1.1 lakh fishermen families, 77% are traditional fishermen who depend on fisheries for their livelihood, and among them 47% are women. So as we all know, women in marine sector play multidimensional role. There are around 90,000 fisher folk engaged in fishing allied activities such as marketing, laborers, mending or repairing net, curing, processing, peeling, etc. And in some of the fishing allied activities like curing, processing, peeling, and marketing, we can see more women than men. So women usually dominate in such fishing allied activities. So coming to the dried fish production in Odisha, so there is a huge landing of undersized and low market value fish as bycatch, which are mostly discarded at sea during peak fishing season. But during the lean seasons, these fishes are brought to the landing centers by the fishermen and used for the curing. So one of the report from government of India says that out of 8.18 lakh tons of fish produced during 2019-20, 0.52 lakh tons of fish was utilized for curing. Though, uh, though Odisha, is one of the biggest producer of dried fish in the country, so still there is quite less market value for the product due to the unhygienic practice followed by the fishermen or fisherwomen. So the project got an opportunity to work with these women self-help groups to increase the nutritional outcomes, reduce the waste and loss, and create the business opportunity for these women self-help groups. So we brought women self-help groups from the Mission Shakti. We made a convergence with the Department of Mission Shakti, which is the umbrella organization for the WSAGs, and Fisheries Department. We installed and operationalized around 10 polyhouse solar dryers in 6 coastal districts of Odisha. So if I give some background on the how the dry fish is made, otherwise how the women are involved in Odisha, usually women are involved in the dried fish production as an individual and not as a group or something. So, but under the convergence, what we did is we made a group in the community and trained them in the hygienic dried fish production. So since it was new, not a new technology, government had previously also installed some of the dried solar dryers in the coastal regions, but somehow it did not work out due to various technical reasons. But these simple low-cost solar dryers, which are we installed, were easily operated by women groups, which improved the efficiency as well as quality of the product without any much cost. What is our observation was the price of the hygienic dried fish products were much better than the one which is produced through the traditional sun drying method. So obviously the women self-help groups were very happy in involving in this dried fish production demonstration. So one of the happiest thing for us is the success of this demonstration encouraged the government to promote this in a larger scale through their one district one product program, that is under the micro, small and medium enterprise department. Government has a plan to promote around 500 WSAGs in next 5 years who will be taking up this hygienic dried fish production. So government also have a plan to provide market linkages through various means. One is the ORMAS. ORMAS is the Odisha Rural Development Marketing Society, which provides a platform for the WSA to sell their products. And government also has a plan to link these fish products to the school supplementary nutrition program. So WorldFish conducted in 2020-21, WorldFish conducted a 6-month pilot program where these small dried fish and fish-based products were included in the diets of children, adolescent girl, pregnant women, and lactating mother. So the results were most of the products were well accepted by the children as well as community. So there is an ample scope to link these products to the SMP program so that women are more encouraged to involve in the dried fish production. So my observation is, after forming the women self-help group, they have attained their economic importance. They have gained more access to the information. They have understand their rights, build their confidence, improve the access to credit, and also improve the socio-economic status. So another lesson what we learned is, when we work with the partners, especially with the government, we can deliver it better and the impact can be really big. Yeah. So that's all. Thank you, Rina. I'll hand over the virtual floor to you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Nita. I think we have already seen a few comments saying nice in the chat session, and I'll completely echo that. It's always inspiring to see these social innovations as well as low technological innovations, how they can make a difference. And just having mentioned the chat, do check out the chat. We're sharing links at the same time, but also do start your questions coming. We'll be taking those to our panelists in the Q&A session. But first, of course, before we get to the Q&A session, I'd like to to invite our third and final panelist of the day, Ime S. Umo. And he's the Director of Fisheries of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development in the government of Nigeria. We're honored to have you with us today, and the floor is yours, Ime.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can I say good morning, or can I say good afternoon, or can I say
both
good evening?
Apply. All of the above, Ime.
All of them. Here in Nigeria, we say good morning to all of you that are here. I want to really appreciate you for inviting us for this meeting. And I want to really appreciate Rena. We had a discussion on Monday, and we have been having a good relationship with WorldFish. Nigeria has a population of about 206 million people, and Nigeria is a maritime state where about 6 up to 9 of the 36 states of the country have a coastline in the Atlantic Ocean. And it has a coastal line of about 853 kilometers bordering the Atlantic Ocean. And in this area, we have in the Gulf of Guinea and the exclusive economic zone. The country has numerous economic activities in which the highest percentage depends on or is derived from the ocean resources. But it is explicitly clear that our blue economy potential is just very far from being harnessed, is not really exploited. The Nigerian maritime domain is rich with a variety of resources that support livelihoods and economic development. These include established activities like fisheries, shrimping, shipping, coastal oil and gas, maritime and coastal tourism, and other potentials in the maritime sector. Fish plays an important role in Nigerian lives, as 47% animal protein comes from fish. Agricultural fisheries is significant, and it's a contributory factor to total fish supply, amounting to 21% inland aquaculture. And inland fisheries contribute equal shares of 17%, and 44% comes from fish imports. Industrial fishing contributes a paltry sum of only about 1%. And it is worthy to note that the total fish demand in Nigeria is about 3.5 million metric tons, and the total production is about just over 1.1 million metric tons, and we have a demand gap of about 2.5 million metric tons. It has been estimated that Nigeria ranks 10th globally for the number of people dependent on coastal fisheries for food and nutrition security, and the demand for fish is growing alongside the growth in the population and incomes. Because Nigeria has a coastline that spans more than 835 kilometers, there is an opportunity here for government of Nigeria to explore research, to policy in investments, ideas for sustainable aquaculture food production from the ocean, especially to ensure the food, nutrition, and livelihood security of coastal communities living in this area. A variety of species are commonly eaten in Nigeria, including crayfish, freshwater and saltwater sardines, and bonga fish and other species, as well as cultured fish species such as tilapia, carp, and popular catfish. It has been predicted that by the year 2030, Nigeria will have a supply-demand gap of 3.4 million tons of fish to bring the per capita consumption to world average of 20.2 kilograms. Aquaculture, which is mostly monoculture of large species like catfish, I've mentioned, and tilapia, is seen as a pathway through which Nigeria can close its existing fish supply gap. Culturing more fish species would widen the nutrient diversity to feed the growing population that is being projected. Since Nigeria has not utilized its significant coastal resources for aquaculture, it offers good prospects for identifying suitable coastal zones to plan and develop environmentally sustainable mariculture to contribute to narrow the demand and supply gap. Our coastal resources offer potentials to go into mariculture of molluscs, seaweeds, marine fish species such as silvers, sea brains, groupers, marine shrimps. However, it is yet to be developed, and there is need to focus more on these areas in order to enhance food security and employment opportunities for people living in the coastal regions, as well as export earnings. The narrow continental shelf extending for about 15 kilometers in the western area and ranges, from about 60 kilometers to 80 kilometers in the eastern area of Nigeria. There is a potential for off the coast and offshore aquaculture of marine fish species if all the available potentials can be harnessed, which in the long run will help in bridging this gap, and the shortfall will be intervened. For the effective offshore aquaculture practices, suitable areas for offshore aquaculture need to be identified and properly mapped out. Proper practices to provide an overall plan for the development, management, and conservation of the Nigerian exclusive economic zone need to be developed. Finally, proper monitoring should be ensured in order to keep the environment and the people safe. Expansion of industrial fishing from inshore to offshore waters will also increase fish production and employment. As I mentioned, the offshore exploitation is just about 1%, and we have not really exploited the offshore potentials in the country. The national exploitation of these resources has to be determined on data and information gathered through research, essential for management and conservation. To this end, exploratory research surveys aim at identifying the various fish resources and areas of occurrence, including the distribution, have been carried out by the various research institutes. In Nigeria, we have about 6 fisheries research institutes, including the National Nigerian NIOMA, the National Research Institute, based in Lagos, who have carried out the stock assessment of this, the potentials that we have in Nigeria for determination of the availability of such resources in commercial quantity for exploitation. I want to conclude by saying that the current projection of global climate change and sea level rise, the coastal region is under threat. It is timely for Nigeria to develop a broader scientific approach through integration of coastal zone management for the long-term management and conservation of coastal resources, including aquatic food production through aquaculture. Nigerian government will make a conducive ocean governance support policy and will support all global initiatives on ocean governance. As a government, we did that promise that we are going to support any initiative that will help, to make any conducive ocean governance by developing policies and programs. I will also support, I will encourage any intervention that will help these global initiatives on ocean government. So I want to really appreciate WorldFish in Nigeria, WorldFish globally, and even my brother Rena for organizing this conference. And we believe that during the question and answer section, we'll be able to throw more light on the issues affecting Nigeria as a country. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ime, for your contribution. I think that's and I think that kind of wraps up our your presentations of the panelists today. But there's also now, I think we're going to be moving over to the onwards to the opportunity for question and answers to our panelists, to others as well. Please, if you do have questions and questions, please do put them either in the chat or the question and answer box. And I'm hoping I'd like to invite our speakers, to turn on the cameras and microphones for the Q&A session, and keep your questions coming, and we're going to have a look at them and relay them to our panelists. Let's see. Is anything coming in? And as a reminder, please put it both in the Q&A or in the chat session. And I see now that I have one question coming in from Mike Acaster for Nita. So Nita, are you prepared? Good. It says, good to hear your presentation. And he has a specific question on when the quality of dried fish is improved, it receives an increased price. So what is the price increase? And if a lower quality product is still available, what are the associate health risks from consuming the cheaper product?
Thanks, Mike. Where we have promoted the dried fish production, it is the interior kind of areas. So there in the interior villages, we have got a price increase difference of around 100 to 200 depending on the species. So if for the women SHG, it is really a good opportunity. So they are very happy, because when they use the traditional method, they used to get much lower price, but now they have got an increase of around 100 to 200 depending on the various species. And as of the health risk, so usually these dried fishes are consumed by many people, but especially the tribal people who they take to the far places where there is no access to fresh fish. So obviously, if we improve the quality of the fish, obviously we can also improve the health of the people. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Nita. Please keep your questions coming. I think I might have one for Delvene, actually. And I think you mentioned some of the small investments in there in your presentation. I'd be very intrigued to hear a bit more about that, and maybe some of the successes or even challenges from those small investments in the Solomon Islands.
Thanks, Reina. So the example that I shared on the women's savings group, WorldFish supported the group, providing them with solar freezers, and the research was about if the women could save enough at the end of the project to replace their freezers. And we had various degrees of success, but one of the key challenge to this initiative was the technology itself. So we proved it actually worked. The women used it. They stored fish. They were able to save money from the freezers. It was actually the technology and the maintenance and the repair. What happens, at that time. So that was. It proved to be a success, but the technology was a challenge. And the normal investments that the country has done, that the government has done, is on larger fishery centers where people don't actually have access to it. It's usually placed in the wrong areas, and so people don't access it. So this was a way of showing that small investments to families, to household groups, to women's groups can work.
Yes, unmute. Great, thanks, Delvene. We have another question for Nita, I believe. And it concerns. Thank you for your work and presentation. And it's a question from Hoyt Peckham. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, by the way. Apologies if not. And it's an about women's SAGs supported by the national and provincial governments of India. IGOs, I guess that's intergovernmental organizations like the World Bank and WorldFish. So could you speak a bit more about how these women's SAGs are formed? That's one. Whether they are fully incorporated and the like. And then the comment, I gather they're used for capacity strengthening, but also as a savings function and all sorts of other activities that might require official formalization. So how they formed, how they formally incorporated, and maybe some comments on savings, other activities in regards to formalization. Nita, I hope that was clear. If not, please get back to me.
Actually, these women's self-help groups are formed by Mission Shakti, a department in the government of Odisha. So they have a department where in every block there are women self-help groups. So usually these groups contain around 10 members from nearby, from a nearby their place only, in a cluster or same village. So these are registered under the Mission Shakti. So there are around 6 lakh women self-help groups containing around 7 lakh members in Odisha. So they are involved in various activities, and fisheries is one of the activity. So they in multigrain powder production, otherwise perfume sticks or those kind of agriculture. There are lot of field they are involved in, and fisheries is also one of the important field they have come in. So in aquaculture also there are a lot of WSCGs are taking up aquaculture, and in the marine fisheries sector they are mainly promoted for the marketing and dried fish production. So these WSCGs will generally have a president and a secretary who will be conducting a meeting every 15 days or monthly basis on their consent from the members. So every whatever the decision will be taken, that will be decided through a meeting, and accordingly all the purchases or anything will be made. That's how these WSCGs will work. So it is purely the decision taken by the members and president, secretary.
Great. Thanks, Nita. We're getting some questions in, so what I'm going to do is read them. Let's see. Yes, there's one from Gert van Santen. Nice to see you here, Gert. And that's a question to Mr. Umo. And specifically, Mr. Umo, you referred to the demand supply projections for Nigeria. And these projections for the rest of West African countries will no doubt suggest similar import needs. So in what way could the need for additional fish supplies, in addition to what can be sustainably supplied locally, be approached? Do you feel the need for a country-by-country basis, or would you also see some need for regional arrangements? I think that's the question from Gert van Santen. Over to you, Ime.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I want to really say that the supply and the demand gap is there in Nigeria. And we have a sub-regional organization that is really working with Nigeria, the FCWC, the Fisheries Commission of West and Central Africa, that is based in Ghana, and other fisheries regional organizations that we work in Nigeria to see the level of intervention that we can be assisted so that this gap can be bridged. And the issue is in terms of local fish production. And the potentials is there. As I mentioned, the land area, we mentioned the water area, we mentioned the aquaculture intervention, and we mentioned every other area. But all the issues that we are facing is the issue of fish feed and even the culturable fish species that we are having in Nigeria. We are only concentrating in those cultural, the two species, the tilapia and the catfish. But the research is being going on in different research institutes to see how we can diversify to other fish species. And I also mentioned that we have not really exploited the coastal and the industrial and the offshore potentials in the country. And I believe that as a region, instead of just depending on import of frozen fish into the country, we can still stimulate investment in the issue of local fish production in the country. And I believe that within the sub-region and within the global environment, we can also see how we can stimulate production in Nigeria by welcoming investors in the area of fish feed, investors in the area of the industrial exploitation of the marine potentials, and investors in other areas that will also stimulate fish production in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you, Ime. We are getting some good questions. Keep them coming. We're going to do our best to try to answer them all, but do keep them coming. And the next question, I believe, is for Cristina. It's a short one from Mike Accaster. And hi, Cristina. Thanks for your comments and reflections on the strategy. So have you come across any concerns over the stated aims in the strategy? Have you heard any?
Yeah, good question. Provocative. Nothing jumps out as alarming in terms of what's in the strategy in terms of being cross purposes or kind of incoherent or doing the wrong things or doing things in the wrong way. What I think is the challenge is financing the strategy. There's a lot in there. There's a need for many different types of partnerships, which would require different kinds of funding. And as we're seeing, this is an increasingly constrained world, as a lot of development budgets are being shifted to address Ukraine and the crises in food and fuel that has caused. Still responding to the COVID challenge and many national governments. Very constrained in terms of their budgetary flexibility. So I think my top concern with the strategy is how does this get financed, and how do we build the types of partnerships that we really need to build to deliver on the strategy. Only so much of that will come through the CGIAR. And so there's a need to find other mechanisms to finance all of the great ideas that are in there. So that's what I would say.
Great, thanks for that, Cristina. Maybe invite other panelists as well, maybe to chime in on that question if they feel the they want to. And otherwise, we can go over to the next one. Okay, actually, there's one to me. Wow, from Richard Ogutu Owayo, and once again, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. And he's participating from the shores of Lake Victoria in East Africa, so welcome. To what extent does the aquatic food systems for healthy people and planet cover inland waters? Well, yes, it does, absolutely. But the focus today is also on oceans. So yes, it does. Join us for another session on that, probably. So keep you posted, Richard. And then I think that then we'll move on, I think, to Lin Zhao. Once again, do correct me if I'm not pronouncing correctly. That's to Delvene. And so what kind of technologies you've mentioned is essential to local market and women workforce. And so what kind of technologies are essential to local market and women workforce in order to sustain investment into local, local markets? Do local governments have to enlarge the range of investment programs in partnership with international organizations? Thank you. I guess that somewhere in there is what kind of technologies you've mentioned: local markets, women workforces, sustained investment. Do local governments have to enlarge their range of investment programs in partnerships? Over to you. I'm sure there's many things to say about that.
Sure. I think for the example that I shared earlier, the key issue that the women's group identified was access to cold storage, and it was mostly to store their fish that the men were coming back with, and to be able to use it the next day or the next throughout the week. And in this particular case, the solar freezers was the technology that the women's group opted to trial. To sustain investments like this, it does benefit from a partnership with government, both at the provincial level here in Solomons and the national. I guess with this particular program and any other fish livelihoods that are emerging and using technology, is a partnership with the technology service provider. That was the challenge that we had here. Because the communities were remote, we couldn't get out the solar freezer service provider to do the repairs. But there are other groups that are forming now in terms of getting the training on solar freezer repair that could provide the service for communities who are doing similar initiatives. But definitely, yes, partnership with provincial and national governments beneficial all around.
Great. Thank you, Delvene. I think we have a quick and easy question, maybe for Nita, and it's from Prasant R. And it's how easy is it to get into and out of the dried fish business in Odisha? I think it's a very business-focused question, but maybe also you might comment: is that different if you are a man or a woman?
Yeah, it depends on. So there are a lot of opportunities for both the entrepreneurs as well as women SAG. So first of all, they have to. There is a lot of potential. So if you want to do a business, there is an investment too. So if they are ready to invest, there are a lot of opportunities. They can connect to the local fisheries, fishermen, and have a. It will also provide them the opportunity to earn something. So it might be not that difficult to do a business in Odisha.
Thank you, Nita. So keep your questions coming. there's also the opportunity for any follow-up questions. Do input those in either the chat or the Q&A box. I think I have one myself for email, and I'm wondering, what do you see as some of the key research and partnership gaps in Nigeria, and maybe if you have some knowledge about the rest of the region as well. So in order to achieve your goals and maybe also the SDGs. So.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, actually there is a gap between the research and the really implementation at the governmental level. Nigeria, as I mentioned, is a very large country, and the research sometimes are not actually transmitted, cascaded, to the level of implementation. For example, we're talking about the culturable fish species, and I mentioned that we have only 2 species now that we are being cultured in Nigeria: the tilapia and the catfish. But last year we actually communicated this to the 6 research fisheries institutes and even the universities, that they should come out with other species, that can compete favorably with these 2 species. And this year we had information that we have other species that are going to be tried. Apart from the species that are here, we are also having a partnership with WorldFish on the issue of a giant tilapia. That one has been brought into the country and is being cultured now in Oyen Dam, this PAL, this Premium Atlantic Limited, Oyen Dam in Oyo State. And when the the period is over, we are going to actually have a pool of a giant tilapia that is going to be distributed to farmers. And the WorldFish is also having research on the issue of feed. As I mentioned, that 80% of the cost of production of fish is being consumed by fish feed, which is actually imported into the country. And WorldFish is having a research on that. And last year we had some consignments from WorldFish and are being tested in some farms. And I believe that this year and before the next 2-3 years, this research and is going to be what is going to be the feed that is going to be produced locally is going to be something that will be worthwhile in Nigeria and going to be used in Nigeria. So the gap is gradually being closed up with this research and with the intervention of programs, sometimes being organized by other international organizations, but most especially WorldFish in the area of the feed and the area of the fish seed that are being intervened in Nigeria. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I think that just a quick follow-up question. That this speaker or this person was anonymous, but I think this might be relevant to this, and it's pertaining to species diversity in Nigeria. I think commenting on tilapia, but also just maybe looking more at other species. Are there also any other species in Nigeria with potential to fill that gap, and maybe seaweed? So maybe briefly, if you have any initiatives on that or research needs, and then.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I told you that we have only 2 species: the catfish, is the
right.
Etroclarias, the breed between Etrobranchus and Clarias, Etroclarias, and the tilapia. I told you that the WorldFish is often, we are also partnering with them, to bring in the genetically improved farm tilapia that is being brought into the country, and it's the broodstock was developed and also being popularized. But the seed is being developed in Oyan Dam now on a premium aquaculture limited farm. And I believe that with this number, we'll be able to close the gap. So apart from these two species that I mentioned, the other species are being worked on. And I believe that within the next 2-3 years, we are going to diversify the culturable fish species to other species that will be able to help the country to grow. Thank you.
Thanks. Great. I think we are going to be. There's still a few questions coming, but I think we are going to be wrapping up this session. I think we're nearing the end of our allotted time. I'd just like to thank each and every one of you for those wonderful contributions and responses to the questions. So we're approaching the end of the webinar, and I think I'd also like to invite Shakuntala Tilsted, and she's our global lead for nutrition and public health at WorldFish. But she's also a member of the steering committee of the Productive Ocean Laboratory. And I'd like to invite you to the floor, Shakuntala. So welcome. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Rainer. And greetings to all of you from around the world, and especially for those who took the time to pose questions and comments. Firstly, I wish to thank our speakers. And firstly, Cristina, thank you so much as our board member for championing our WorldFish strategy and also for the agenda moving forward. Thanks to all the panelists for providing us with a comprehensive overview of the reach of aquatic foods obtained from the oceans and inland water bodies in ensuring food and nutrition security, livelihoods, and income, as well as social inclusion of women and youth in the food systems of the Solomon Islands, Odisha, India, and Nigeria. Today's discussion is timely as the world grapples with issues of food shortages and inequitable access to diverse, nutritious, and safe diets. And this is exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, climate change, and now the conflict in Ukraine. In the latest UN Security Council meeting, the Secretary General of UN informed the meeting that most of the 140 million people suffering from acute hunger live in just 10 countries, including Nigeria. Price increases in the major food crops have also resulted in an additional 400 million people becoming food insecure globally within the last 5 months. And this is a 40% increase. Discussions on food systems, especially on aquatic food systems, is in its infancy and now beginning to be featured in international and national platforms, thanks to the work that WorldFish is doing with its partners. Most of the discussions continue to focus on ocean governance, ocean economy and trade routes, mining and resource management, and mapping of the ocean floor, and not on the productive and diverse aquatic food systems. This is despite the fact that aquatic foods are consumed by over 3 billion people and is a source of livelihoods for more than 800 million people. Therefore, it is through sessions like these that we seek to inform and empower communities, nations, and international audiences to realize the importance and potential of aquatic foods, superfoods, and leverage on the shared knowledge and capacity here to inform and change policies, increase investments. Cristina talked about the investments for moving forward with our strategy, to better protect our aquatic food systems, and the people who depend on these. Today's session complements the last of 7 Ocean Decade laboratories, designed to catalyze partnerships and co-design actions to achieve the aspirations of the United Nations Decade 2021 to 2030 of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. These sessions allow scientists, policymakers, and citizens to come together on a common agenda and to contribute to the discussions and commitments of the upcoming UN Ocean Conference at the end of this June, and also of the 27th Conference of Parties meeting, COP27, in November. With less than 8 production cycles left before we reach 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals, we must bring together people, actions, and solutions, as we are doing here today, to transform our food systems for sustainable, nutritious, and safe diets, leaving no one behind up to 2030 and beyond. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Shakuntala, for leaving us with an inspiring message at the end of this. Thank you also to all our speakers for their contributions today. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research for hosting us at the United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development Conference. So, and last of all, thank you, attendees, for actively participating in today's virtual session. I hope you've gained something useful from our discussions, but also please, do keep questions coming. We're seeing this as an opportunity to address some of the challenges and opportunities of aquatic food systems together, also with you. And we hope you've gained something useful from our discussion. So please, we've shared a lot of links in the chat. Please do look at those resources. Do subscribe to our newsletter. There's a number of the key oceans-related events which have also just been shared in the chat. So thank you very much for your attendance. Please do see that. Now, before you go, please do subscribe to WorldFish's newsletter. Link is posted in the chat box, and as you mentioned, then we'll get some of the, I believe the recording and some of the presentations, which some of you have been asking for. So, having said all that, thank you so much. Thanks, panelists, audience, and of course our support team. And see you soon.